Jake Morrison stared out the window of his small apartment on Luna Station. The view showed Earth spinning slowly below, blue and beautiful. But Jake felt nothing when he looked at it. 3 months had passed since the Titan colony disaster. 3 months since he watched 3,000 people die because of his choices. The military court had cleared him of all charges. They said he did everything right. They said no one could have saved more people, but Jake knew the truth. He could have done better. He should have done better. A soft chime came from his computer. Jake turned away from the window and walked to his desk. A message waited for him from Admiral Rogers at Galactic Survey Command. Jake almost deleted it without reading. He had turned down 5 job offers this month. He wanted nothing to do with space exploration anymore, but something made him open the message. Maybe it was boredom, maybe it was curiosity, or maybe he was just tired of sitting alone in his apartment. Captain Morrison, the message began. I have a special mission that requires your skills. It's a solo exploration assignment to the Outer Rim. Signal source Delta 7 needs investigation. The mission comes with full command of the exploration vessel UES Wanderer. No crew, no supervisors, just you and the unknown. If you're interested, report to Bay 12 tomorrow at 0800 Admiral Rogers. Jake read the message 3 times. A solo mission meant no one else would get hurt if he made mistakes. No crew to worry about. No civilians to protect. Just him and whatever waited in the darkness between stars. He looked back at Earth one more time. Then he typed his reply, I accept. The next morning, Jake stood in Bay 12 looking at his new ship. The UES Wanderer was small compared to the massive colony ships he used to command. It was built for one person and long journeys. The ship had everything he needed: sleeping quarters, a small kitchen, basic medical bay, and advanced scanning equipment. Admiral Rogers met him at the airlock. She was a tall woman with gray hair and kind eyes. Jake had known her for 15 years, but they had barely spoken since Titan Colony. Jake, she said, I'm glad you took the mission. What exactly am I looking for out there? Jake asked. Admiral Rogers handed him a datapad. 2 weeks ago, our deep space sensors picked up an automated distress signal from the Kepler 442 system. The signal is coming from an alien structure on the 4th planet. Based on the signal pattern, we think it belongs to the Zephyrians. Jake looked at the data. The Zephyrians had vanished from the galaxy 200 years ago. They left behind empty space stations and mysterious technology that humans still couldn't understand. No one knew why they disappeared or where they went. The structure has been sending the same signal for decades, Admiral Rogers continued. But something changed 2 weeks ago. The signal got stronger. We think someone or something activated new systems. Why send me alone? Jake asked. Admiral Rogers was quiet for a moment. Because you need this, Jake. And because if there's danger out there, I trust you to handle it better than anyone else. Jake nodded. He understood. This wasn't just a mission. It was a chance to disappear, a chance to find purpose again, or maybe a chance to die doing something useful. 3 hours later, Jake was in hyperspace heading toward the Outer Rim. The journey would take 2 weeks. 2 weeks alone with his thoughts and the endless stars outside his window. Jake spent the time reviewing everything humans knew about the Zephyrians. It wasn't much. They had been a peaceful race that explored the galaxy long before humans reached the stars. Their technology was based on organic materials that could think and grow. Their buildings looked more like living creatures than machines. Then one day they all vanished. Every Zephyrian space station went dark. Every colony was abandoned. Ships were found floating empty in space. But there were no bodies, no signs of violence. They just disappeared. Some scientists thought they had evolved beyond physical form. Others believed they had fled to another galaxy. A few thought they had all died from some unknown disease. Nobody really knew. When Jake's ship dropped out of hyperspace near Kepler 442c, he got his first look at the alien outpost. The planet was gray and dead with no atmosphere and no life. But sitting on the surface like a metal spider was the most beautiful building Jake had ever seen. The outpost was huge, maybe 2 kilometers across. Its walls curved in smooth organic lines that seemed to flow like water. Strange symbols covered the surface, glowing with soft blue light. It looked alive. Jake's sensors confirmed that the structure was sending the distress signal. But they also showed something else. Power readings were much higher than expected. The building wasn't just sending signals. It was fully active. That's impossible, Jake said to himself. It's been abandoned for 200 years. He took the wanderer down to the planet's surface, landing a safe distance from the outpost. As he prepared to go outside, Jake felt something he hadn't felt in months: excitement. For the first time since Titan Colony, he was curious about what he might find. Jake put on his environmental suit and checked his equipment. Oxygen levels in the suit were good for 6 hours. His sidearm was charged and ready. His scanner could translate most known alien languages, including basic Zephyrian. The walk to the outpost took 10 minutes across the rocky surface. Up close, the building was even more impressive. The main entrance was a massive door covered in flowing Zephyrian script. Jake's translator worked on the symbols, showing him fragments of meaning: welcome, safety, new beginning. But the strangest thing was that the door was already open. Not fully open, but cracked enough for a person to squeeze through. Jake checked his scanner for signs of life. Nothing. The building appeared empty. Jake took a deep breath and stepped toward the opening. As soon as he got close, lights began to flicker on inside the outpost. Soft blue illumination spread through corridors beyond the door, as if the building was waking up. "Hello?" Jake called out. His voice echoed in the empty spaces beyond the door. No answer came back, but somehow Jake felt like something was listening. Something was waiting for him inside. Jake looked back at his ship one last time. Then he squeezed through the gap in the door and stepped into the alien outpost. Behind him, the door sealed shut with a soft whisper of moving metal. The corridor ahead glowed with gentle light, and Jake could see it stretching deeper into the building. He had come here looking for answers to a simple distress signal, but as he walked forward into the unknown, Jake had the feeling that what waited inside would change everything. Jake walked slowly through the glowing corridors of the alien outpost. Each step he took caused new lights to appear, creating a soft pathway ahead of him. The walls seemed to pulse with life, covered in flowing Zephyrian symbols that his translator could only partially read. "Sanctuary," his scanner whispered as it processed the alien writing. "Protection. The Chosen One approaches." Jake stopped walking. "Chosen One?" he said aloud. His voice echoed strangely in the corridor, as if the walls were listening. The pathway of lights continued deeper into the building. Jake had no choice but to follow. He checked his suit's oxygen levels. Still 5 hours remaining, plenty of time to explore and get back to his ship. As he walked, Jake noticed that the air inside the outpost was breathable. His scanner confirmed it. The atmosphere was clean and safe for humans. After 200 years of abandonment, somehow the building was still maintaining perfect environmental conditions. The corridors led him past empty rooms filled with strange, organic-looking equipment. Some rooms contained pools of glowing liquid that bubbled softly. Others held towering structures that looked like metallic trees with crystal leaves. Everything was alien, but also strangely beautiful. Jake's translator continued working on the wall symbols, giving him more fragments. Final gift. Species preservation. The last hope. "What were you people doing here?" Jake whispered. After 20 minutes of walking, the corridor opened into a vast circular chamber. Jake stopped and stared. The room was enormous, with a domed ceiling that rose at least 50 meters above his head. But what made him gasp was what filled the chamber. Thousands of crystal pods lined the walls, arranged in perfect rows from floor to ceiling. Each pod was about the size of a human coffin, made from some kind of clear material that gleamed in the blue light. Most of the pods were dark and empty, but dozens still glowed with bright energy. In the center of the chamber stood a raised platform with a control console covered in Zephyrian symbols. As Jake approached, the console came to life. Lights began blinking and a holographic figure appeared above the controls. The hologram showed a tall, graceful being with pale blue skin and large, dark eyes. It wore flowing robes and had the distinctive elongated skull of a Zephyrian. When it spoke, Jake's translator provided perfect English. "Welcome, human," the hologram said. Its voice was soft but carried an echo of great sadness. "I am Keeper Vexithera, guardian of the Legacy Project. I have waited 200 years for your arrival." Jake stepped backward, his hand moving to the weapon on his belt. "How do you know English?" "How do you know I'm human?" The hologram smiled sadly. "Our quantum scanners have been monitoring the galaxy for suitable candidates. Your species has been observed since you first reached the stars. We have learned your languages, studied your culture, and watched your development." "Candidates for what?" Jake demanded. Vexithera gestured toward the glowing pods. These contain the preserved consciousness of our greatest minds. Scientists, warriors, leaders, artists, the best of our civilization. We saved them here in our final days, hoping another species would be worthy to receive our gift. Jake looked at the thousands of pods. What happened to your people? We were destroyed by an ancient enemy called the Devourers. They consume everything, planets, stars, entire civilizations. We fought them for 50 years but could not win. In our final moments, we prepared this place as our legacy. The hologram moved closer to Jake. The Devourers follow a pattern. They attack, consume, then retreat to dark space for 200 years to grow stronger. Their cycle is ending. They will return soon. Why are you telling me this? Jake asked. Because you have been chosen, Vexithera said. Our scanners have analyzed your neural patterns, your moral structure, your capacity for sacrifice. You are compatible with our consciousness transfer technology. Jake thought about the Titan colony disaster. I failed my last mission. 3,000 people died because of my decisions. You saved 7,000 others, Vexithera replied. You chose to sacrifice yourself to save as many as possible. This is why our scanners selected you. You understand the cost of leadership. The Keeper gestured to the nearest glowing pod. Inside this pod is the consciousness of Cormanth, our greatest military strategist. He fought the Devourers and learned their weaknesses. His knowledge could help your species prepare. You want me to what, download an alien mind into my brain? Not download, integrate. Your consciousness would remain, but it would be enhanced with ours. You would gain our knowledge, our abilities, our understanding of advanced technology. Jake stared at the glowing pod. What's the catch? Vexithera was quiet for a moment. Each consciousness you integrate changes you. You will become something new, part human, part Zephyrian. Eventually, you may lose yourself entirely. And if I refuse, then the galaxy will face the Devourers without our knowledge. Billions will die. Entire civilizations will be consumed. Jake walked around the chamber looking at the thousands of pods. So many minds, so much knowledge, all waiting in crystal prisons. How do I know you're telling the truth? Vexithera touched the console and the dome above them became transparent. Jake could see the stars, but also something else. Dark shapes moving in the space between systems, too far away to see clearly, but definitely there. Long-range quantum scans, Vexithera explained. The Devourers are already moving. They will reach the outer colonies in 6 months. Earth itself will be attacked within a year. Jake felt cold fear in his stomach. Show me the process. Vexithera led him to the first pod. Inside, Jake could see a faint outline of a Zephyrian body, perfectly preserved. Cormanth was our finest tactical mind. His memories include 50 years of fighting the Devourers. He knows their ships, their weapons, their strategies. What happens to me? You will remain yourself, but with his knowledge added to yours. You will understand things no human has ever understood. You will see solutions to problems that seem impossible. Jake looked at the pod for a long time. He thought about the people who died at Titan Colony. He thought about Earth, peaceful and unaware of the coming danger. He thought about his empty life since the disaster. If I do this, Jake said slowly, will it help me save people? Yes, Vexithera answered, but it will also change you forever. Jake reached out and touched the surface of the pod. It felt warm, almost alive. How many consciousnesses are stored here? 47 active pods remain. Each contains a different aspect of our civilization: military, scientific, cultural, spiritual. To gain the full knowledge needed to defeat the Devourers, you would need to integrate them all. And that would make me what exactly? Vexithera looked sad. Something beyond human. Something beyond Zephyrian. Something new. Jake closed his eyes and thought about Admiral Rogers' words. She had sent him here because he needed this mission. She trusted him to handle whatever he found. Maybe this was what he was meant to find. Show me how it works, Jake said. Vexithera moved to the console and began activating systems. Place your hand on the pod's surface. The neural interface will establish a connection. The process takes approximately 1 hour. Jake hesitated. Once he did this, there would be no going back. He would no longer be just Jake Morrison, failed captain from Earth. He would be something else entirely. But maybe that was what the galaxy needed. Maybe his failure at Titan Colony had prepared him for this moment. Maybe he was meant to lose himself to save everyone else. Jake placed his hand on the warm surface of the pod. Immediately, he felt a tingling sensation that spread up his arm and into his mind. The pod began to glow brighter. Beginning consciousness integration, Vexithera announced. Welcome to your new destiny, Jake Morrison. As the alien knowledge began flowing into his mind, Jake wondered what he would become. But for the first time in months, he felt hope. Maybe he could finally do something right. Jake felt like he was drowning. Memories that weren't his own flooded through his mind as the consciousness of Cormanth merged with his own thoughts. He saw alien worlds burning under dark skies. He watched massive ships the size of moons consume entire planets. He experienced 50 years of desperate warfare through alien eyes. When the integration finished, Jake collapsed to his knees beside the pod. His head pounded with new knowledge. He understood weapon systems he had never seen. He knew the layout of enemy ships he had never encountered. Most terrifying of all, he remembered the day the Devourers came to the Zephyrian homeworld. How do you feel? Vexithera asked, kneeling beside him. Jake looked up at the holographic keeper. His vision was different now. He could see energy patterns in the walls, quantum fluctuations in the air, probability streams flowing through space. I can see things, he whispered. Things that aren't there. You are seeing reality as Cormanth saw it. The integration was successful. Jake stood slowly, testing his balance. His body felt different, stronger, more coordinated. When he moved his hand, he could predict exactly where it would be before it got there. What did Cormanth know about defeating them? The Devourers are not truly alive, Vexithera explained. They are self-replicating machines created by an ancient civilization that destroyed itself. They follow simple programming: find matter, consume it, make more of themselves. Through Cormanth's memories, Jake saw the terrible truth. The Devourers had no emotions, no mercy, no ability to negotiate. They simply ate everything in their path and moved on to the next target. But they have weaknesses, Jake said, accessing Cormanth's tactical knowledge. Their central command ships are vulnerable during replication cycles. Their smaller units can be confused by quantum interference patterns. Yes, Cormanth discovered these weaknesses during the final battles, but knowing them and using them are different things. You need more knowledge. Jake looked at the other glowing pods around the chamber. How many more? To have a real chance against the Devourers, you should integrate at least 12 consciousness patterns. Each one will give you new abilities but also change you further. Jake walked to the next active pod. Inside lay another Zephyrian, this one smaller and more delicate looking. Who is this? Zara Lynn, our greatest physicist. She understood dimensional science and quantum manipulation better than anyone. Her knowledge would allow you to build weapons the Devourers cannot defend against. Jake placed his hand on the second pod without hesitation. The integration was easier this time, but the effects were more dramatic. Suddenly he understood how space and time worked at the smallest levels. He could see how to bend reality itself using quantum fields. When it finished, Jake felt even less human. Zara Lynn's scientific mind mixed with Cormanth's tactical knowledge, creating new possibilities in his thoughts. He looked at the outpost's walls and immediately understood how they were built, how they thought, how they could be improved. The Devourers are coming here, Jake said, accessing long-range sensor data through the outpost systems. I can feel them moving through dark space. How long do we have? Vexithera asked. Jake closed his eyes and used his new quantum awareness to probe the distant darkness between galaxies. What he found made his blood run cold. 6 weeks, maybe less. Over the next 3 days, Jake integrated 4 more consciousness patterns. Each one added new abilities but cost him more of his humanity. He gained the memories of Thexmore the engineer, who knew how to build weapons from living metal. He absorbed the knowledge of Yindar the explorer, who understood how to navigate through dimensions. He merged with Velthana the healer, who could manipulate biological systems with thought alone. By the time he finished the 6th integration, Jake's reflection in the pod's surface looked strange to him. His eyes now glowed with faint blue light. His movements were too smooth, too precise. When he spoke, sometimes Zephyrian words mixed with English. But the worst part was the loneliness. Each consciousness he absorbed had its own personality, its own memories of loss and failure. Jake carried the grief of an entire civilization in his mind. He remembered children who would never grow up, art that would never be created, songs that would never be sung. On the 4th day, Jake's solitude ended. His ship's communication system activated, showing an incoming message from deep space. Admiral Rogers appeared on the screen, her face worried. Jake, we've been monitoring your position. Your ship's been sitting on that planet for 4 days with no communication. Are you all right? Jake looked at the communication console. Should he tell her the truth? Should he explain that he was no longer entirely human? That he carried the minds of 6 dead aliens in his head? I'm fine, Admiral, he said carefully. I found something here. Something important. What kind of something? Jake hesitated. Through his enhanced senses, he could detect other ships moving in hyperspace toward his location. A rescue fleet was coming, led by someone whose quantum signature felt familiar. Lisa, he whispered, recognizing the neural pattern of his former first officer. What was that, Jake? Nothing, Admiral. How long until the rescue fleet arrives? Rogers looked surprised. How did you know about the fleet? Jake realized his mistake. His enhanced senses were beyond normal human capability. Lucky guess. How long? 18 hours. Commander Rodriguez insisted on leading the mission personally. She refused to believe you were on a voluntary assignment. Jake smiled sadly. Lisa Rodriguez had been his first officer during the Titan colony evacuation. She had saved more lives than anyone else during the disaster, but she blamed herself for not saving more. In many ways, she was just like him. Admiral, I need you to understand something, Jake said. What I found here is going to change everything. The galaxy is in danger from something we can't fight with normal weapons. What are you talking about? Through Cormanth's memories, Jake accessed Zephyrian historical records. 200 years ago, an alien race called the Zephyrians was completely destroyed by machines called Devourers. These machines consume everything. Planets, stars, entire civilizations. They're coming back. Rogers was quiet for a moment. Jake, you've been alone on that planet for 4 days. Maybe you're experiencing some kind of stress reaction. I'm not hallucinating, Admiral. I have proof. When the fleet arrives, I'll show you everything. Jake ended the communication and turned back to Vexithera. They're coming to rescue me. Will you leave with them? Jake looked at the remaining consciousness pods. 6 more minds waited to be integrated, including the most important one, the High Coordinator who had planned the entire Legacy project. If I leave now, I won't have enough knowledge to stop the Devourers. And if you stay, you may lose yourself entirely. Jake thought about Lisa Rodriguez and the rescue fleet heading toward him. Soon he would have to choose between his humanity and the galaxy's survival. He had integrated 6 alien minds already. Each one made him stronger but also pushed him further from who he used to be. Through the Outpost sensors, he could feel the Devourers moving closer. Their hunger was like a cold wind blowing across the galaxy. In 6 weeks, they would begin consuming the outer colonies. In 6 months, they would reach Earth. Jake walked to the 7th pod. Inside lay Morthek, the warrior, whose consciousness contained knowledge of personal combat against Devourer units. One more, he said to himself. But as he placed his hand on the pod's surface, Jake wondered what would be left of Jake Morrison when this was over. Would he still care about saving humanity? Would he still remember what it felt like to be human? The integration began, and Jake felt another alien mind merging with his own. 7 consciousnesses now shared his thoughts. 7 different perspectives on reality. He was becoming something new, something powerful, something that might be able to save the galaxy if he could remember why it mattered. Outside the outpost, stars wheeled overhead in their ancient patterns. Soon ships from Earth would arrive to rescue him. Jake would have to decide whether to remain and complete his transformation or return to his old life and watch the galaxy burn. Either way, the man who had entered the outpost 4 days ago was already gone. The rescue fleet dropped out of hyperspace just as Jake finished integrating his 12th consciousness pattern. Through the outpost sensors, he watched 5 Earthships approach the planet. The lead vessel was the UES Valiant, a heavy cruiser he recognized immediately. Jake stood in the central chamber, surrounded by empty consciousness pods. 12 alien minds now shared his thoughts, their memories mixing with his own until he sometimes forgot which experiences belonged to whom. His reflection in the pod surfaces showed a man who barely looked human anymore. His eyes glowed with constant blue light. His skin had taken on a faint silvery tint. When he moved, it was with the fluid grace of a Zephyrian dancer combined with the deadly precision of a warrior. He could feel quantum fields flowing around him like a gentle breeze. The rescue team is preparing to land, Vexithara announced. The holographic keeper had been his only companion during the integration process. "Will you tell them what you have become?" Jake accessed the tactical knowledge of Cormont, the scientific understanding of Zara Lynn, and the diplomatic skills of Helvarine. "They won't understand. Humans fear what they can't explain." Through the Outpost communication array, Jake listened to the rescue team's radio chatter. Commander Lisa Rodriguez was leading a squad of Marines toward the main entrance. Her voice was tense with worry. "Scans show the building is active," Rodriguez reported. "Power levels are off the charts. Whatever Captain Morrison found in there, it's still running." "Any signs of the captain?" came the reply from the fleet commander. "Negative, but the main door is sealed shut. We're going to have to cut our way in." Jake smiled sadly. Lisa always was direct in her approach to problems. He walked to the central console and opened the main entrance with a thought. Through the outpost sensors, he watched the massive door flow open like liquid metal. "What the hell?" Rodriguez muttered. "The door just opened by itself." Jake began walking toward the entrance to meet them. As he moved through the corridors, the walls responded to his presence, creating patterns of light that followed his path. The integration had connected him to the outpost's living systems. In many ways, he was part of the building now. He met the rescue team in the main corridor. Rodriguez led 6 Marines, all in full combat gear with weapons ready. When they saw Jake approaching through the glowing hallway, they raised their rifles. "Captain Morrison?" Rodriguez called out. "Is that you?" Jake stepped into the light where they could see him clearly. Rodriguez gasped and took a step backward. The Marines muttered in confusion. "Hello, Lisa," Jake said. His voice carried harmonics that hadn't been there before, musical tones that resonated in the living walls around them. "Jake, what happened to you?" Rodriguez stared at his glowing eyes and silvery skin. "You look different." "I am different." Jake gestured for them to lower their weapons. "I found something here that changes everything. The galaxy is in terrible danger." Rodriguez signaled her Marines to stand down but kept her rifle ready. "What kind of danger?" Jake led them deeper into the outpost, toward the central chamber. As they walked, he began explaining about the Zephyrians, the Devourers, and the consciousness integration process. He tried to use simple terms, but some concepts had no human equivalent. "You're telling me you downloaded alien minds into your brain?" Rodriguez asked. "Not downloaded, integrated. Their consciousness merged with mine. I have their knowledge, their abilities, their memories." When they reached the central chamber, the Marines stared in amazement at the thousands of crystal pods. Rodriguez walked to one of the empty pods and looked inside. "These used to contain alien minds." 12 of them, Jake confirmed. "Each one taught me something new about fighting the Devourers." Jake activated the chamber's holographic display system. Images filled the air around them. Star maps showing Devourer movement patterns, technical specifications for their ships, recorded battles from the Zephyrian War. "This is incredible," Rodriguez whispered. "If this data is accurate, these Devourers are heading straight for human space. They'll reach the outer colonies in 5 weeks," Jake said. "Earth will be attacked in 6 months." Rodriguez contacted the fleet commander and transmitted the data. Within hours, emergency communications were flowing between Earth, the colonies, and every military installation in human space. The threat was real and it was coming fast, but preparing defenses required technology that humans didn't possess. Jake led Rodriguez and her team to the outpost's manufacturing facilities. Vast chambers filled with growing metal and thinking machines. The Zephyrians built weapons from living materials, Jake explained. He placed his hand on a control surface and the machines came to life. "I can operate their technology now. I can build things that might stop the Devourers." Over the next week, the rescue fleet became a construction armada. Jake guided human engineers in building weapons that seemed impossible. Energy fields that could cut through Devourer armor, quantum disruptors that confused their sensors, dimensional shields that bent space itself. But each piece of equipment required Jake's hybrid consciousness to operate. The Zephyrian technology responded only to minds that had been integrated with their people. As the days passed, Jake became more crucial to humanity's survival and less human himself. Rodriguez watched her former captain work 16 hours a day, teaching human scientists concepts they barely understood. She saw him solve engineering problems by thinking in 11 dimensions at once. She watched him communicate with the living machines using harmonics that made her teeth ache. "Jake," she said one evening as they stood on the outpost's observation deck, "what happens when this is over? Will there be anything left of you?" Jake looked out at the stars. With his enhanced vision, he could see gravitational waves from distant galaxies, quantum foam bubbling in empty space, the faint traces of devourer ships moving through the darkness. "I don't know," he admitted. "Sometimes I forget which memories are mine. Sometimes I think in Zephyrian and have to translate back to English. The integration process is changing your brain structure," Rodriguez said. She had been studying the medical scans taken when Jake first returned to the ship. "You're becoming something else." "Something that can save the galaxy," Jake replied. "Isn't that worth it?" Rodriguez was quiet for a moment. "Is saving everyone worth losing yourself?" Jake thought about the question. Through Cormant's memories, he remembered the final battle for the Zephyrian homeworld. Through Zarlin's consciousness, he understood how entire star systems could be converted to raw materials. Through the combined awareness of 12 alien minds, he felt the weight of billions of lives depending on his choices. "Yes," he said finally, "it's worth it." But even as he spoke, Jake felt another piece of his humanity slip away. The man who had failed at Titan Colony was disappearing, replaced by something more powerful but less human. He could save the galaxy, but he might not remember why it mattered. 2 days later, Jake made a decision that would complete his transformation. The most important consciousness pod remained unopened, that of High Coordinator Thelvas, who had planned the entire Legacy project. "This integration will be different," Bexithara warned. "Thelvas was connected to our entire civilization. His consciousness contains the collective experience of our people." Jake stood before the final pod. Inside lay a Zephyrian who had carried the hopes and dreams of an entire species. Integrating with Thelvas would give Jake the power to coordinate galactic defenses across multiple star systems simultaneously, but it would also complete his transformation into something beyond human understanding. "The Devourers will reach the outer colonies in 2 weeks," Jake said. "I need this knowledge." Rodriguez grabbed his arm. "Jake, please, don't do this. Find another way." Jake looked at his friend and former first officer. In 2 weeks, the outer colonies would burn. In 6 months, Earth would face extinction. Without the High Coordinator's knowledge, billions would die. "I'm sorry, Lisa," Jake said. He placed his hand on the final pod. As the consciousness of Thelvas flowed into his mind, Jake Morrison ceased to exist as an individual human being. In his place stood something new, a hybrid entity with the memories of 13 beings, the tactical knowledge of an entire civilization, and the power to fight gods. But in gaining the ability to save everyone, he had lost the part of himself that remembered why saving them mattered. The first Devourer ships emerged from dark space like metal nightmares. They appeared at the edge of the Kepler system without warning, massive constructs the size of small moons that immediately began consuming the outer asteroid belt. Each chunk of rock and ice they absorbed made them larger and stronger. Jake stood in the transformed Outpost command center. His consciousness stretched across 17 different star systems simultaneously. The integration with High Coordinator Thelvas had given him abilities beyond human comprehension. He could think in multiple dimensions, process quantum data streams, and coordinate defenses across thousands of light years. But he was no longer Jake Morrison. That human identity existed only as a faint echo in the hybrid consciousness that now controlled galactic defenses. He remembered Earth, remembered caring about humanity, but those feelings seemed distant and abstract. Devourer. "Fleet strength is increasing exponentially," reported Admiral Rodriguez from the command ship UES Unity. She had been promoted to lead the Galactic Defense Force, a desperate alliance of 17 species united against the common threat. Jake's response came through communication arrays across the galaxy, his voice speaking simultaneously from hundreds of different sources. Confirmed. They are following standard consumption protocols. Estimate 48 hours before they move toward inhabited worlds. The battle for the galaxy began at the Rigel Outpost, humanity's furthest colony. Jake had spent weeks preparing defenses using Zephyrian technology, quantum disruption fields, dimensional weapons, and living metal constructs that could adapt to enemy tactics. Through sensor networks he had built, Jake watched the Devourers approach Rigel like a plague of living machinery. Their ships moved with mechanical precision, ignoring all attempts at communication. They had no interest in surrender or negotiation. They simply consumed everything in their path. "All units, this is Admiral Rodriguez," came the transmission from the defense fleet. Engage the enemy. Remember, we're not just fighting for humanity today. We're fighting for every living thing in the galaxy. Jake coordinated the battle from his position in the outpost, his hybrid consciousness processing tactical data faster than any computer. He guided human ships through quantum-folded space, directed alien vessels in flanking maneuvers, and activated Zephyrian weapons that bent reality itself. The first phase of the battle went better than expected. Jake's preparations had given the Allied forces advantages the Devourers hadn't encountered before. Quantum disruption beams confused their targeting systems, dimensional shields deflected their conversion weapons. Living metal fighters adapted to their tactics in real time. But the Devourers learned quickly. With each destroyed ship, they analyzed the new weapons and developed countermeasures. What worked in the first hour became useless in the second. By the third hour, they were adapting faster than Jake could modify his strategies. "We're losing ground," Rodriguez reported as the defense fleet fell back toward Rigel's inner system. "They're adapting to everything we throw at them." Jake felt the weight of 13 Zephyrian minds analyzing the problem. Through Cormonth's tactical knowledge, he understood that the Devourers' greatest strength was also their weakness. They adapted by networking their experiences across the entire fleet. "Prepare for Protocol 7, Jake announced across all communication channels. "What's Protocol 7? Rodriguez asked. Jake didn't answer directly. Instead, he began implementing a strategy that no single human mind could have conceived. Using Zaralin's understanding of quantum mechanics, he created interference patterns that would disrupt the Devourer's communication network. Using Thelvas's knowledge of collective consciousness, he prepared to turn their greatest strength against them. The plan required Jake to extend his awareness across the entire battlefront, connecting with every Allied ship and weapon system simultaneously. The strain was enormous, even for his hybrid consciousness. He felt pieces of his remaining humanity burning away as he pushed his abilities beyond their limits. "Jake," Rodriguez called through the communication array, "your bio readings are going critical. You're pushing too hard." "Acceptable losses," Jake replied, his voice now completely devoid of human emotion. Protocol 7 activated across 3 star systems at once. Jake triggered quantum interference bursts from hidden arrays he had built during the preparation weeks. The bursts disrupted Devourer communications for exactly 1.7 seconds, long enough to create confusion in their adaptive algorithms. In that moment of confusion, Jake struck with everything he had. Living metal constructs burst from dimensional pockets, surrounding Devourer ships with adaptive weapons. Quantum disruptors fired in perfect synchronization, overwhelming their defenses before they could adapt. Dimensional weapons folded space around their command vessels, trapping them in recursive loops. The Devourer fleet at Rigel was destroyed in 17 minutes. But Jake's consciousness had been stretched beyond its breaking point. As the last enemy ship died, he felt his awareness fragmenting across the galactic defense network. "Jake!" Rodriguez's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Jake, respond!" But Jake Morrison no longer existed as a single entity. His consciousness had merged with the defense network itself, becoming something vast and distributed. He existed in every communication relay, every sensor array, every weapon system he had built. The victory at Rigel was only the beginning. Over the following months, Devourer fleets attacked system after system. Each time Jake's distributed consciousness coordinated the defense, adapting his strategies as the enemy adapted theirs. The final battle came when the last Devourer fleet attacked the Sol system itself. 1,000 enemy ships approached Earth, their hulls made from the matter of a dozen consumed worlds. They had learned from every previous defeat and adapted beyond Jake's earlier strategies. Rodriguez commanded the defense fleet from Earth orbit, her hair now gray from months of desperate warfare. "All ships, this is it. Everything we fought for comes down to the next few hours." Jake's consciousness spoke from every ship at once. His voice was no longer recognizably human, but something vast and alien. "I understand their final adaptation pattern. Victory is possible, but the cost will be absolute." "What do you mean?" "To defeat them completely, I must merge fully with the Galactic Defense Network. I will become the network itself. Jake Morrison will cease to exist." Rodriguez was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft with grief. "Is there no other way?" "No," Jake replied. "But this is what I chose when I entered the outpost. I came here to start over. This is my new beginning. The final battle lasted 6 hours. Jake sacrificed his remaining humanity piece by piece, burning away his human identity to power weapons beyond imagination. He turned the Devourer's own adaptive nature against them, creating feedback loops that destroyed them from within. When the last Devourer ship died in Sol's outer system, the galaxy was safe. But Jake Morrison was gone forever. His consciousness merged with the vast network of defenses he had created. In the aftermath, Admiral Rodriguez visited the outpost on Kepler 442c one last time. The building had grown over the months, its living systems spreading across the planet's surface. At its heart, the consciousness that had once been Jake maintained eternal vigilance. "Are you still in there somewhere?" Rodriguez asked, speaking to the gentle presence that flickered in the outpost systems. The answer came not in words, but in the continued peace that stretched across the galaxy. Jake had become its guardian, watching over billions of lives from his distributed existence in the quantum realm. Years later, when new threats emerged from distant galaxies, the allied species would speak of the human-Zephyrian hybrid who protected them. Children would learn about the man who sacrificed his humanity to save everyone else. The outpost on Kepler 442c became a memorial and a sanctuary, where people from across the galaxy came to pay their respects to the guardian who watched over them. Sometimes visitors claimed they could feel a presence in the building's systems, warm, protective, and eternally vigilant. Jake Morrison had come to the abandoned outpost looking for a way to start over after his greatest failure. In the end, he had found a new beginning beyond anything he could have imagined. He had become something greater than human, something that would ensure no species would ever face extinction alone. The man who had failed to save 3,000 people at Titan Colony had ultimately saved trillions. His sacrifice had given the galaxy hope, peace, and protection that would last for ages to come. In choosing to lose himself completely, Jake Morrison had found a way to save everything that mattered.